Good afternoon, and thank you for joining part 4 of our four-part Infor XA web series. Today's presenter will be Rick Altenau. He will be presenting on Infor XA Enterprise Financials. As usual, please use the question box for all questions during the presentation, and they will be answered at the end. We thank you for joining. This is the last of this series, but with the great success we have planning to do another series here, so please keep your eyes open, and we will be sending out information on that in the upcoming weeks. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Rick.
Thank you, Elsa. Good morning or good afternoon to everybody. I happen to be in California this week, so it is good morning for me. Today we're going to be discussing enterprise financials. This is a term that many of you have been hearing for weeks and months and years even, as far as XA is concerned. And I want to give you a status of where it's at, why it's important to have this in your plans, and be able to help you move forward and hopefully get you thinking about what you want to do with your financial system and put a plan in place when it will be time to upgrade. So the enterprise financials, again, is the newest financial system within XA, and that's what we'll be talking about for the next 45 minutes to an hour. We'll leave a little bit of time at the end for some questions. To start out with, because I am going to be talking about things that may come out in the future, about releases that are going to come out, Infor likes me to put up the disclaimer, which basically says anything that I'm talking about coming out in the future, whether it's by date or by function, is not a promise. It is something you simply need to know that they have the right to change until the product is released. But I don't think I'm going to be talking about anything controversial. I think everything that I'm going to be mentioning is something that is in the pipeline, most of which I've seen pieces of already, so I know it's being developed, and we'll be able to move forward from there with no issues. Now, because we have a wide variety of people that are on this webinar, I'm going to start with just 2 or 3 slides giving us a little bit of background of how we got to where we are. XA has been around for a long time. It started out way back here in the green screen modes. This product is over 40 years old, which is both a positive and a negative, but for the way Infor has managed this, it's a positive. Most ERPs that were around in the 1970s and 1980s are not around anymore. The thing about XA and the reason it's successful is it has been rewritten 4 times. It is staying modern, staying current. It is keeping up with the technology of the day. And the latest release of this product is quite impressive. And we're going to be talking about some of that today. Almost everything I'm going to be talking about is going to be involved in HTML, which is the go forward interface. But there are options as to how you want to run this product. I'm not going to get much more into that, except for the fact that some of the reasons we are upgrading to enterprise financials is the older financials are not supportive of the newer technologies. They were discontinued, and we'll talk about when and how and things like that. The current technology, what we call IDF, a term that you don't really need to worry about, but IDF stands for Infor Development Framework. It is what creates PowerLink, Netlink, and SystemLink. So these 3 boxes on top are the 3 technologies that are supported by Infor. PowerLink is a Java client-server interface where you're loading something on your PC or on your network to be able to run the system. Netlink is simply a URL. It's no different than going to Google or going to Yahoo. There's nothing to load on your system, and it runs on anything that has an HTML server. So you can run it on your phone or on your iPad or wherever it is that you need to run this. And then XML is the language of the internet, which is how these objects talk to XA, to the iSeries. So these things are the 3 technologies of today. That's as deep as I'm going to get into that. Just want you to know what those options are up front, because I'm going to have sample screens of different types coming through. All of these are available today, no matter which screen I happen to be showing you. So, why is any of this important? The good news, bad news of Infor. And this goes back to when it was Mapix. Anytime Infor puts out a new upgrade or a new capability into the system, they generally release it, and their goal is not to interrupt your business. They don't want IT to load a PTF or a release update over the weekend and you come into work on Monday and don't know how to do your job. We're not trying to shut you down. So what they do is they load all improvements, all releases in the background. It allows you to continue and run your job the way you always have. So if there's a new capability out there, you might not even be aware of it if you don't turn it on, because you need to activate these functions. You need to go get a new card. You need to turn on a new code. You need to do something generally in order to activate a lot of the functions that are out there. The key to this is you have to actively change how you are using the system, and that's up to you. You might be running release 9.2, which is the current release, but if you're running green screens, if you're running a lot of the older technology saying, why am I still doing it this way? Why does the screen look this way? You may be using something that has been replaced, but you've never upgraded it on your system. You could be running on release 9.2, but running your system as if you're on XA release 6 or XA release 4. So knowing those capabilities are there are very important. And I said I'm only doing this for 3 or 4 slides. A lot of you are running your financial systems this way. Now, the financial systems, unlike just providing new technologies, have been discontinued and replaced with new functionality. For the most part, you are probably entitled to the newest software at no cost. I say at no cost. You've been paying for it in your annual license fee. You've done upgrades in the past. You've done things that allow you to do that upgrade. I say for the most part because there are some customers that could be on certain releases that did not get some of these capabilities. Check with your account exec. Call, find out what you're entitled to. But for the most part, Enterprise Financials is something that's already available to you, and it's simply a matter of going through the implementation. So, with all that being said, why do we need a new financial system? What's going on? Well, accounting management has been around since 1978. It came out on a System 34, which is quite a while ago. A System 34 had a maximum of 12 terminals. 12. It's obviously designed for one plant, for an accountant, a single accountant. It doesn't have history because they didn't have extra disk back then. When you closed months, things got deleted. So a lot of the original design of the product looked the way it did because they were tight on disk space. So these are all things. This product has been out for a long time. The strength of accounting management is its simplicity. You can load it today and be running it tomorrow. The weakness of accounting management is its simplicity. It only runs it the way it's designed to run. And that generally does not meet the needs of today's manufacturer. So we also have something called International Financial Management. This came out in the 1990s. Now, if you think back to the 1990s, you did not have a PC yet. You didn't even run DOS. This was pre-Windows. So the inquiry, the reporting, the printing capabilities, this was even before the laws for Sarbanes-Oxley were released. So there are a lot of things that it was not designed to handle. It is so much more powerful than accounting management. In my opinion, by the way, it was misnamed. It shouldn't have been International Financial Management. It should have been Integrated Financial Management. But of course, they did not ask my opinion when they released the product. So anyway, these are why we need a new financial system. These tools simply don't meet the needs of today. So we're introducing Enterprise Financials. It is exciting. For those of you that have been around this ERP for a long time, whether it was called XA or whether it was called Mapix back in the day, you know that accounting has never been our strength. Yes, we handled accounting. We were a manufacturing accounting system. This system, Enterprise Financials, is a system that is as strong of an accounting system as anything that's out there. So this is something that personally I'm very excited about. I've actually talked to a couple of customers for the accounting purpose rather than talk to them about manufacturing and say, yeah, we have an accounting system too. So it's really much stronger than you've ever seen. It composes a general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, a cash management application, and an Excel-based financial reporting tool. That's what Enterprise Financials is. It's developed, I would like to say 100%, but it's 95% on the IDF, meaning the Windows framework. There are a couple pieces of green screen code that are coming out. Here's one of those cases where I'm saying something new. This is not a tough statement to make, but with release 9.3 coming out, those last very small pieces, which by the way were just a couple of code files, things that you had to set up once and never go into again, those are being removed and converted over to IDF. So this will be totally an IDF application. But this is not running green screen in the background and you're screen scraping anything. This is designed and built in the IDF. It coexists with your existing general ledgers. So that means that if you're running accounting management or you're running IFM, when you load this tool, you can run them both if you wanted to. But you can keep an old one for historical purposes and run the new one. One does not replace the other. Receivables and payables get replaced, but the general ledger itself coexists. They play well in the same sandbox. So most of the screens I'm going to be showing you, the examples, are going to be in Netlink. They're going to be in the HTML5 user interface. This is the standard interface moving forward for Infor. PowerLink is not going away. It's fully supported, but we're no longer going to be developing in PowerLink. New capabilities are going into Netlink. And again, the 9.3 release that's about to be coming out will round out Netlink, so it does everything and more than what PowerLink does. So it's a very strong release, 9.3. That's not what we're here to talk about today, but 9.3 is going to be the largest release in XA's history, going back to 1978. Very excited about a lot of the things that are coming out. But bottom line is, we're using Netlink as our standard interface moving forward. So with that being said, when do these conversions take place? Why did we have to do them? What are we looking at? Well, accounting management came out way back in Mavix 1, 2, and 3. If you didn't know it, it's been stagnant since release 6. There have been no upgrades to it, no capabilities added to it since release 6. However, Infor has allowed you to continue using the product. There's a hard stop coming on this. It is going to be discontinued. With release 10, and I've got a slide coming up so you'll see the time frame. With release 10, which is at least 2 years away, the green screen code is going to be removed. So you can continue running release 9 for a long time, but we want to be able to look, anybody who's running accounting management, it's not going to be a supported application anymore. IFM then came out in XA, release 1. It has been the primary growing financial system since then, but as of release 9, development in IFM has stopped. This has all been replaced with Enterprise Financials. IFM is also going to be discontinued. So the support for this is going away. Because these are both green screen applications, we're getting rid of that from an Infor standpoint. So at some point in your future, you need to look and think about upgrading this. So where did Enterprise Financials come from? What is it that we're looking at? Well, just in case you're curious, this is really for people who like to see the system. Infor LX, another I-Series application, it used to be called BPIX, had the core of a green screen general ledger that was the basis for Enterprise Financials general ledger. So those of us in the XA world, this is brand new. And they really redesigned it and reworked it, gave it a lot more capabilities when they put it into the IDF. But that is the source of where this general ledger came from. The good news about that statement is this is not written from scratch. This is not untested financial information in the last 2 years. This has been based on the technology that's been around for a number of years. It was completely rewritten to put into the IDF, to put into the current technology. Again, there's no RPG, there's no green screen in the background of this. It is all pure new technology. Now, The IBM team, the I-Series team at Infor, wrote the cash management structure. Infor itself wrote the Excel financial report writer, but the accounts receivable and accounts payable came from XA's IFM for AR and AP. So these are the sources of where the pieces of enterprise financials came from. And not that any of this really affects you on a day-to-day basis, but sometimes we like to know what was the history, where it came from. If you're familiar with IFM, you will see some familiarity when you get into payables and receivables. So you'll understand that, okay, this came from IFM, and that's how it worked together. So what is enterprise financials? Why do I care? Well, this is not going to be a product demo. We're talking about the status of this application, but I want you to understand some key things. The key thing, the central point of any financial system, of course, is its general ledger. XA, if you were running accounting management, had one general ledger. IFM had some more capabilities than that, but enterprise general ledger is an advanced transaction processing ledger that allows you to have multiple books, multiple ledgers, multiple charts of accounts, multiple companies, financial divisions with multiple year ends. We do consolidations. We do all the work that you want to do out of this using a state-of-the-art financial system. The interfaces, although built into this, are customizable also. You can read other databases and bring in your journal entries. So if you are reading the XA database, obviously that kind of stuff is built into the system. But maybe you have a PC that has a fixed asset depreciation charge and you'd like to read it and post the journal entries. Maybe you have an Excel spreadsheet that you do calculations for certain things, square footage, allocations of costs. I can read those documents and upload those directly into the general ledger. It is very, very powerful. By the way, all batch processing that you're associated with in accounting management goes away. Everything's interactive. Now we do subtotals, we verify your posts, we make sure things are in balance, but when it comes to posting things in batch and suspending them and processing them and things like that, that kind of stuff goes away. This is an XML interface that goes directly from your screen or from your spreadsheet or wherever you're posting from directly into your configurable ledger. So how do we configure it? Well, again, this is as detailed I'm going to get on this, but what it does is it allows you to create events, model those events, and then create macros to process it. So in other words, an event is a business transaction. Maybe it's a end of month depreciation posting you want to do. Maybe it is an allocation of fixed assets. Whatever you want it to be, it's an event. You identify it. You identify what the transactions are, what the journal entries are, things like that. You model it by going through templates. It's coming from this spreadsheet. Here are the columns on these spreadsheets. Here's how I'm going to use it when I post. Or it's coming from a bank statement from payroll, and I want to allocate it in certain ways. So the event is what it is that I want to do. The model is how it looks. And the macro are what are the processes that I need to go through to get them to process. You define these things. Now, what's interesting is we're not limiting you to XA. We're not limiting you to one environment. We're not limiting you to one LPAR. And we're not even limiting you to the IBM. You can get this information from multiple sources. So it's very powerful as to how it goes out. So you could, for instance, if you have 3 environments of XA, you might be running, payables and receivables out of each environment, but you might want to run your entire general ledger out of a corporate environment. Now, again, each environment can have its own general ledger. Corporate can have its own. We can consolidate. We can do whatever you want. But that's the kind of flexibility you have when you're setting this up. So not only do I have flexibility in how I'm creating those with my macros, my models, everything we were just talking about, but now what am I posting it to? I can have multiple ledgers. Here in this example, I have 3. I have the corporate ledger that I've always had. Maybe I have an IFRS ledger for my international operations. Maybe I have a sales ledger. Maybe I have a cash ledger, a cash book that I want to run separate from an accrual book. But you know what? I have single journals, and I want to process all the books simultaneously. So the system here allows me to set all those functions up. Once it's set up, the transactions process and they do all the work for me. So it allows me to keep those parallel ledgers and books. And those things can be in different currencies. They can have different period ends. They can have different corporate structures. All these things, you can read the screen, all these capabilities that are built into the system. It's really quite powerful. Now, what do some of these things look like? Here's a case where I said you can have multiple ledgers. Well, here's all these ledgers that I created. Now, these are in our test environments, but you can go through and see there's these different ledgers. When I create a ledger, I say, what kind of books do I want to keep? Actuals, budgets, last year, fiscal year, quarters, however you want to set up your books. You can, your ledgers, you can set them up within one of your corporate accounts. Now, inside of that, for this actual, what type of journal sources do I want to have? Excuse me. So you set these things up. It's a one-time setup. You can maintain it, but you set them up, and that's where it gives you the flexibility, the control of entering these things. Well, what are some of the advantages? Well, let's look at accounting management versus IFM. In accounting management, you have an account number field. It's one field long. It's 15 characters. You probably have the first 2 characters or 3 characters set up as a division, and then you have a department. And you break it down different ways so that you can do different types of analysis, but you only have one field. In international financial management, you had 2 fields. They were called a unit and a nature. So you could set up, office expenses as a unit. I might get these backwards because I get them mixed up all the time. But you would set up office expenses as a unit, and your nature might represent each of the departments that have office expenses. So you can break it down into 2 fields. They were 10 characters each. Well, we're not quite as limiting in enterprise financials. Our account number field is 14 16-character fields. So these things that you say you're breaking up into segments, we are gone crazy over here. And over and above that, every journal entry has 12 reference fields that you can use as a part of your rules when you're setting up your macros as to how things get posted. So a lot of power here. And here I have an example down below. Here's a chart of accounts. And in this particular case, I have a chart of accounts called Chart. Spent a lot of time developing that name. It's our corporate chart of accounts. How am I going to define my fields? Here it is. I'm going to have a company, a division, a department, an account, and a product line. Product line's optional. So maybe I only use product line on cost of goods sold or sales transactions because I want to be able to break down some financial reporting from that standpoint. So then that segment would not be required for any other type of journal entry. I only have to have one active segment. So if I wanted to keep the exact same, if I'm coming from accounting management, I simply want to bring over my field into a segment, I can do that. Not a problem. So then I have organizational relationships. These are things that we just don't think about sometimes in some of the other financial systems, but I can have administrative divisions, financial divisions. In my entities, I can break down the who from the what. Meaning who might be the name of a company. The what, well, that is a customer, or that is a vendor, or that is my bank, or that is an employee. And you can break them down into different categories. So we have these relationships, and then based on how we use those relationships, we can apply the financial purposes to them. Record keeping. Now some of this is getting repetitive, but I have ledgers, I have books, journals, currencies, and charts of accounts. All of these can be different for different companies, for different financial divisions. So if you have a China operation, a lot of my customers are making something in Mexico, making something in China, making something in Canada. They have international operations. In the traditional applications we've had, running things in different currencies was very difficult. Now we can have their own chart of accounts, and they can cross-reference back into our corporate chart of accounts so that we can still consolidate. The tools are all there. Ledger types. Said we had more than one book. General ledgers, accounts receivable, accounts payable. I can have as many accounts receivable books as I want. If I want to break it down by product line, if I want to break it down by some sort of classification, if I want distributors in a different set of books than I want customers, all of that is capable because you break these things down the way you want them to do it. Now, there's this thing called cash books, cash management in this. Remember, I said it was AR, AP, and there was cash management. It's not exactly this way, but I like to compare it to the fact, for those of you that know the manufacturing side, you know, I create purchase orders in purchasing. I create customer orders in customer service management. I create manufacturing orders in order-based production management or repetitive. But I do all my inventory transactions now in something called materials management. So I have these sources, but I have one place for everything in common. Well, that's what cash does, the cash applications. I create my sources and payables and my sources and receivables. Cash is where the transactions take place. Now, that's an oversimplification. So if I have, you know, Al Stein on here listening, he's one of our consultants, he might clarify that a little bit more. But in general, that's what those things are for. Now, here's one of the things that I find most exciting is that what do we all do as accountants? Our favorite tool, doesn't make any difference which receivable or which accounting package you're using, it's Excel. We use everything in Excel. We distribute things, we analyze things, and all that kind of stuff. And chances are we print out an Excel spreadsheet and we use that to enter journal entries. Wouldn't it be nice if there was an interface built into Enterprise Financials that I could read the Excel spreadsheet directly? Well, gosh darn, here it is. This is a part of the process. Notice my different segments. Now, in this particular case, I'm showing all the different segments on here. If I'm only using 3 segments, I can hide all these fields. But the bottom line here is I've defined a spreadsheet with columns. When I upload these spreadsheets, what the system does is it processes each line as if I'm just a very fast data entry person. It goes through it and it processes each one. It checks security. It error checks every field. It does all the work I want it to do, and it gives me error messages back. So it's very powerful. We can use Excel to feed directly into Enterprise Financials. And of course, what's the next thing we do with Excel? We print out our financial statements and we put them into Excel to get our financial reports, right? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to create the financial reports directly in Excel? So this is the tool inside of our system. It allows me to set up the foundation, the structure of these spreadsheets with rules. And then I can refresh the data anytime I want. So in this particular case, look, this comes out like a pivot table. This is an income statement. This is a sales by product line. I have some dashboards down here. There's a lot more capabilities, but the point is we generate our financial reports in Excel. You don't have to then print everything out and transfer it in manually because we do it directly from here. And the formatting, the graphs, everything you see is a part of F9. So that's a part of the Enterprise Financials application. Now, for those of you that look at this particular screen and say, oh, that's sort of cool, but I'm not going to be going to Enterprise Financials for another year, F9 is available on all 3 of our financial systems. So if you're running accounting management, international financial management, or Enterprise Financials, you can load and start working F9 right now. You can print your financial statements in Excel. So keep that in mind. It's an advantage of taking of something you're doing anyway. Yes, there's some setup, but once it's set up, this is available to you. Getting F9 operational and training on it is generally a week or less. It would depend on how much work you want a consultant to do versus what you would do. That would give you all the capability of developing these reports yourself. Now, we have some customers that ask us, we're just too busy. Can you develop the reports? Sure, we can. But typically, it's a matter of training. So,
Rick,
yes.
going back to that, I had two questions that just came through that I thought you may want to answer while on that slide.
All right.
The first is the report writer using live data or after month-end close?
It is using semi-live data. And very simply, let me tell you what that means. The F9 is a network-based, a PC-based product. You refresh the database on your PC as often as you want. Most of my customers refresh it overnight, every night. And then your financial reports are as of overnight. But if it was noon today and you wanted to refresh that data, you can do that. So what it does is it refreshes the, and why does it do it on a PC? Maybe you have data in this F9 that's consolidation data. I'm getting it from 3 different environments. And by the way, I have a division that I bought over in pick a state, California, that's running SAP. And I download the SAP data into my F9 database. And then I can run the reports from there. So F9 is not running live from your XA database. It's running live from your download. And most typically, my customers set that up to run at 2 o'clock in the morning. So they have data as of last night every day. Next.
Perfect. Thank you. Yep, that is good.
Was that both questions?
No, the second one is any improvements with the time and attendance transactions that go into PMC?
Time and attendance is not a part of Enterprise Financials. It's a part of PM&C. It's also part of MES. And for those of you that are interested, it's also part of Guide, Scan, and Track. But the processing of time and attendance transactions are not changed due to Enterprise Financials. So sorry about that.
All right, and while I have you, one more for report writer just came through.
Okay.
Can we download non-XA data to the Excel-based report writer?
Yes, and that's what I was just saying about consolidating data. I have some customers, for instance, don't put a budget inside of XA, but they have a budget in Excel. You can download that Excel data to your F9 database and then generate the new Excel reports using that budget plus your data from XA. So yes.
Perfect. I think we're good to go.
All righty. Go ahead and interrupt if we have anything else. Now, Enterprise Financials, I'm concentrating on the general ledger because that's the biggest change. That's the biggest capability. But for those of you that have been running AM Financials and haven't seen an upgrade since, 1988 or whatever that was, you're going to find this is just a small list of enhancements that are available now in receivables and payables and in cash processing. For instance, if you're running a Kanban, wouldn't it be cool to automatically generate and pay for material receipt without having to do invoice processing? So if you have a vendor that's supplying vendor supplied inventory, every time you pick a product or once a day or once a week, you can auto generate your payments. So we have all sorts of capabilities like that that go through the entire process. From a cash accounts receivable standpoint, we can post cash much easier. We can allocate it across invoices across customers. For those of you that just absolutely love the accounting management 30, 60, 90-day capability that sucks. That's probably not a word I should use on a webinar, but it does. You can print an invoice on the 30th of January, and on February 1, it's in the 30-day column. Well, we do all live date calculations. IFM already does that. We do all live date calculations in Enterprise Financials. So I'm not going to read all these capabilities. I'm simply letting you know that everything is here, a lot of new capabilities. One of the things that I really like is to be able to reverse a transaction. Have you ever posted a general ledger that had 17 account numbers, and all sorts of detailed calculations. You spent 45 minutes doing it. You hit the enter button, and then somebody walks in with an adjustment to your starting number. Jeez. Well, now I can push a button and reverse it. It does not delete it. It reverses it. In the general ledger, we don't ever delete anything, but it will undo the transaction you just did. So in your history, you can see you posted it, you reversed it, and then you re-entered it the correct way. So lots of capabilities like that. So what are some of the other things that you would notice right away? First is the introduction of things called entities. I touched on this a little bit ago. Instead of just having customers or vendors, we now have something called an entity. An entity is the who. It could be a customer, it could be a vendor, it could be an employee, it could be an owner, it could be any class, a number of different people like that. You enter an entity, and then after you enter an entity, you can use that entity in multiple fashions. Well, this entity is a customer. So you enter the customer information based on the entity. Well, the same entity happens to be a vendor. So you can enter vendor information. You can enter whatever it is that's necessary for you to process that entity. But in some cases, again, I'm a manufacturing guy. I think back to the fact that I have to have an item master record before I can create item balance records in different warehouses. But it's all based on an item master. Well, an entity is sort of the same thing. Now, I can create multiple entities for the same who if I wanted to classify it differently, but I'd still need that entity in order to create the customer and the vendor. So I didn't get a lot into payables, receivables, etc. That is the overview of what I'm planning on doing in Enterprise Financials. Now we have more stuff to talk about, but again, this wasn't a demo. This is, I want you to understand this is powerful. It is something that we're excited about, and it's something that you should have in your plans to move towards. So one of the questions is why? Well, earlier I showed you that some of these, the accounting management and IFM is going to be discontinued. Let me go into a little bit more detail here. First of all, granted, this is a marketing slide. It's going to get busy. Why should you upgrade? Well, all of the IDF capabilities, the fact that it's now supported software, it meets the strategic direction of Infor. It follows all the requirements of international standards. It's more timely. It ties into our business intelligence. If you guys haven't seen Burst, well, that's another cool thing. It was one of our earlier webinars that we did. If you haven't seen it, we do have that webinar recorded. It would be available for you to look at, but our BI system is really nice. It has supported staffing. I don't know if you guys have tried or not, but if you call up with questions on accounting management, there's fewer and fewer people out there that know how it works. It's getting to be hard to get the staffing that you need to be able to run it. And then when you hire somebody new, there's nothing more exciting than showing a brand new employee out of college a green screen, because they get so excited about being able to work on that. So staffing becomes important. As I continue, I'm not going to end up reading all of these things, but I will. I'm just letting you know that there's a lot of capabilities. We have GAAP capability, GAAP standards, IFRS capabilities. We have statistical accounts. We separate additional legal requirements. We have really simplified the screens. From some of you who know IFM, the transaction processing has gotten simpler, and it's going to get even simpler in 9.3 and beyond. There are new capabilities coming out that Infor is aware when some of these things have multiple screens or multiple requirements. So they're adding those capabilities. Multi-environment, multi-system, multinational. You can personalize all your defaults. All the capabilities of IDF are going to be built into this. Easier to get information, once again, because it's in the IDF. Also because we have the breakdowns of the segments of the account numbers, all those capabilities, you can get to this information easier and faster. And you turn this on file by or object by object, but you have a complete audit trail of everything that you've ever changed. Not those lovely before and after reports, but you have historical information online of what has changed. So as we're looking at these things, customizable, extendable. All of these things are why you should upgrade. But I have a blunt statement to make. If you're going to stay current on XA, when release 10 comes out, which is, like I said, 2 years away, green screen is going to go away. Ultimately, this is the supported financial system for XA. So, with that being said, keeping my notes up with me here, this is a roadmap. Now, again, notice there's a disclaimer on the bottom. It's the same disclaimer that you read earlier. This is not from Infor. This is my interpretation of what Infor has been telling us about the rollout of Enterprise Financials Release 9.3, Release 10. Ross Freeman has looked at this, and he does not mind me showing this. So even though I wrote this slide, I just wanted to put all the different things that I've read into perspective. So I've said a couple times that Release 10 is going to take away green screens. What does this mean to you? Currently, we're at Release 9, 2020. During this year, before Release 9, well, we're at Release 9.2. Before Release 9.3, Infor is talking about releasing a whole bunch of new capabilities as they are ready. So these are going to be PTFs. Don't know if they're going to be dot releases or just PTFs or how they're going to do them, but these are enhancements that are coming out that are supposed to be coming out sometime this year. Again, no commitment, but that is the plan. Now, when 9.3 comes out, again, the largest release in XA's history, it is going to come out because this thing is so big and limited availability. There's 4, 5, 6 customers, I'm not sure how many Infor has, that is going to load this, and they're going to work it, and they're going to test it, and they're going to get the bugs out. So by the time most of us load this, it has been quality approved, and not just internally in Infor, but by customers. They're expecting this time frame from limited availability to general availability could be 6 months. You know, here it says at least 6 months. That depends on how fast our customers test the products, and how, you know, how they're going through it, what they're going to do, what they're looking for. So there's not a fixed time frame here that's under Infor's control. But if 9.3 Limited comes out the last quarter of this year, October, November, December, by second quarter of next year, we could be looking at general availability of 9.3. Now, this is also not a fixed statement, but roughly 9 months after 9.3 will be Release 10, which is when green screens get eliminated. Now, the main difference here, 9.3 was a new idea. We were going to go from 9.2 to Release 10. But customers went to Infor and said, look, we're running some green screen objects here, and you're going to take away green screen before we have a chance to test all of your new IDF capabilities. And Infor said, you're right, this makes sense. That's when they announced 9.3. 9.3 is going to be, and for those of you that have said, well, I thought Release 10 was going to be coming out about now. 9.3 is Release 10. Everything that was planned on Release 10 is coming out in 9.3, except they're not taking away green screens. You can go to 9.3. You have, as long as you're on 9.3, green screen works, any customizations, things that you've done still work, and all of IDF, 100% of IDF will be available in 9.3. Now, by Infor policy, when Release 10 comes out, the last release of the previous release will be supported software for 7 years. So I'm not trying to scare anybody to get rid of green screen. If 9.3 comes out in 2021 and Release 10 comes out, call it January 2022. That means 7 years from, this is good till 2028, and you're still supported. So you don't have to rush into this. The point being is that you want to move forward. The capabilities, the new function that's out there, I am so excited about where XA is going. And for any of you that were wondering a few years ago if XA had a future, man, I have been so happy to see the new capabilities that are coming out. Are they coming out slower than I wanted to? Yes, but they are coming out. And I'm very excited about where the product's going and what it's going to do. So this is the time frame, my interpretation of what I have heard, and you guys understand that I hear a lot of things from Infor, probably a lot more than you guys do directly. So this is my interpretation of what that schedule looks like. Now, with that being said, how are you going to go about implementing enterprise financials? We are not recommending that you do this on your own. There's a team involved here. Infor is a software developer, Guide is your affiliate, and I believe that we have some people on this webinar that are not Guide customers. That's fine. Use your affiliate and get the support, get the team in line before you want to start this. Start making some phone calls, get this thing organized. There's a lot of things that you can do, and it is rather complicated. How are you going to do it? Well, there's no one answer to this. Again, I wrote this slide, which is why I'm saying exactly what's written. I will be honest in the fact that the first initial conversions of this were not as successful as we wanted them to be. Early adopters had some successes, but several of them paused their projects because they ran into some issues. Now, those issues have been resolved. We are being successful now at all the implementations that we're working on. I'm very, very comfortable of enterprise financials as a go-forward function right now. But some of you have heard of the conversion tool that Infor wrote. Guide Technologies is not recommending that we use that conversion tool. We have learned some of the problems, and I'm a slide ahead of myself, but I'll come back to this. But we have learned the right ways to do this, and what we are recommending is that we take this step at a time. Again, I'm a slide ahead of myself. I'll get there in a second. But we want to get the team ready. This is not a turnkey solution. I don't recommend that you do it on your own. At least talk to us. Talk to me if you don't know who your account exec is, and I will get you in the right direction. Let's make sure you understand what you're doing before you step into this. Now, there's a number of things that when you upgrade won't change. Your company structures, your account numbers, your chart of accounts. That doesn't mean you can't change it, but these things don't change unless you manage them. Your customer numbers, your vendor numbers, your account balances, all these things come across as a part of your configurations, your terms, your tax rules, things like that. So the foundation is still there. But this is where I said I was ahead of myself. We heard about the issues with the AM conversions. The biggest problem was with the tool that Infor wrote is the accounting management database was not a controlled database. Enterprise Financials is. Meaning, when you are in your system and you're looking at a journal entry, you can drill into that journal entry and pull up the purchase order. You can drill in and pull up the receipt on that purchase order that generated your journal entry. It links all those things together. Accounting management databases did not cross-reference all that stuff. You know personally, you might have 3 years of customer history, 1 year purchase history, 2 years of inventory transaction history, 5 years of general ledger history. You know, you can have all the sorts of different things. Well, now we wrote a conversion tool, Infor wrote a conversion tool that tries to cross-reference all this stuff. I had a customer that ran the error check and had 1.6 million errors. I'm not saying that the goal wasn't good of what they did, and the code they wrote worked. The problem is the data is not controlled. And so bringing that data over has turned out to be a problem. Now, Guide has taken this and developed our own implementation steps, but we are a big believer in bringing over your current system as is, not history. So bring over your current system, bring over your chart of accounts, bring over everything you've done as is. Let's get you on enterprise financials. Let's get it working. Once it's working, then let's do business process improvement. Besides, you don't want to change chart of accounts mid-year, and I don't want to change financial systems at the end of a year. So there's reasons that these things that can occur at different times. But let's break it down into pieces that are manageable. Now, are all of these locked in? No, these are recommendations. We will work with you on how you want to do it. But I am going to tell you, I believe there's going to be a consulting budget involved. So I recommend that you get us involved and talk about how we want to do this. When do you want to do it? So this is, again, a guide opinion, my approach, what I've seen work, what I've seen not work. I have customers that do want to do some of these things different. That's okay, as long as you understand where the pitfalls are and you've developed a plan to work around it. So when should you go to Enterprise Financials? That's up to you. Infor is not going to force you to unless you go to release 10. So that's the only thing that an outside person is going to force you to do. The product is stable enough. I have seen it. I've worked with it. We've solved it. Release 9.3 is going to fix some additional problems, but it is stable. They have solved those original issues. Remember, this was announced about 3 years ago. Nobody wants to be in the first kid on the block with a new financial system. I think it took 18 months to 2 years before the first test conversion attempted, and there were some issues. There's no doubt. They've been fixed. We have customers that are running this live and it's working. What time frame does Infor expect? Well, I'm telling you it's going to take 3 to 6 months to get you to Enterprise Financials. But that limitation is not us. Generally, you don't have people in your accounting department sitting around looking at each other saying, gee, I need to come up with something to do. We need to work around your availability. It's also not uncommon 2 weeks a month aren't available out of an accounting department. There's all sorts of things to look at. So that's what we need to look at when we're talking about time frame. But we should plan. We should get it in the budget. We should talk about how to move this thing forward. So here's my suggestions for you. My second last slide. Get current. If you're running Enterprise Financials, you can't run it on a back level. Fixes are not applied to older levels. You know, Enterprise General Ledger came out and released 9.1. The rest of it came out and released 9.2.0. We don't back level fixes. So you want to stay current. So we want to get to 9.2.2, whatever the current PTF level is. Clean up your database. If you have old histories, if you have old stuff that you don't need, the more you clean up, the better it is. If you have duplicate customers out there, if you have duplicate vendors, if you haven't closed your purchase orders in years, you know, how many purchase orders do you have live at any one time? The answer is 200. I've gone into people's systems and found 7,000 open purchase orders. We need to get some of those things cleaned up. The more your history is cleaned up, the better you're going to be. Get your users on IDF, whether it's Power Architecture or Netlink. Get them to IDF. There's no reason, there's only pick, pack, and ship that currently is running on green screen and your financial systems. Now, as soon as I say that, of course, you'll come up with other exceptions. But for the most part, that's it. If you have people running green screens because they just don't want to change, you're going to have more issues going to Enterprise Financials. The IDF populates certain files and code files and certain functions that green screen does not. So converting from a green screen causes issues. We need a budget. How big is that budget? Talk to us. We will help put that plan together for you. We do have we have some experience on this now. We know the size of our databases, the size of the stuff that you're doing, so we can help put together that budget for you in the time frame. And then you need to allocate time of your people to get it done. Get the team members involved, and that includes your accounting people, Guide Technologies, and Infor. Call your account executive. We will help coordinate this. And finally, remember your completion goal is a goal. Don't come to us, well, of course, sometimes you have to, but you don't want to go into this and say, I have to be converted in 4 months, I don't have a choice. that leads to all sorts of problems. We want to set a goal. We want to build around that goal. Be prepared for some things to go wrong. And generally, it's not going to be enterprise financials. It's going to be data related. We're going to build a plan, and we're going to work the plan. So in general, that's the review I have of enterprise financials. I'm excited about it. I showed you the history of how we got here. I showed you a quick overview of what it is, and I talked to you about what we need to do to prepare and get set up. With that, I would love to talk to you about your plans, about your timeframes. But for today, finishes my presentation. So Elsa, I'm going to turn it back to you for questions.
Okay, let's see here. Start out with, is IT or MIS only authorized to create new books, currencies, accounts, or can accounting have authorization as well?
I'm a big believer that IT should not be the one doing that. That is a security question and an education question inside your company. But I'm a big believer that purchasing should be responsible for purchasing, inventory should be responsible by the materials department, finance should be responsible for finance. IT's job is to help set up the security and make sure the programs work. They should not be creating new books. And I've probably just alienated some people that are in IT, but that's my opinion.
Okay, and then another question, for account characters, are they alphanumeric only, or can other characters be used, such as $sign, @sign, etc.?
That's a solid, it depends. There are reasons to keep, for instance, right now, you can do alphanumerics in accounting management. That can cause problems during some of our conversions. So yes, there are some of these tools that are alphanumeric, but the answer goes down to field by field, and it's impossible to make a generalization. But for now, don't be changing your present systems knowing that you're going to a different system unless you know it's supported on enterprise financials. So I'm not answering your question. That's a field by field, file by file discussion.
All right. We can have follow-up there if we need to.
Yes. Feel free to call me. My phone number and my email address is on your screen right now.
This time, I'm not.
I'm at a customer today and tomorrow, so I won't answer. But you can leave a message.
All right. Well, this time I'm not seeing any other questions come through. We're at the top of the hour here. So with that, I think we can wrap it up.
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you all for joining.
Bye-bye.